Hall of Fame broadcaster Marty Brenneman here, and he's the best storyteller in the game, and it's time to sit back, relax, and have some laughs. Welcome to the Mayor's Office, and here's your host, Sean Casey.
Bam, Chinch. Yes. We're back at it, man. We're back at it. This is gonna be a good, man, I feel like every week we're like, this is going to be a great one, but this is going to be really a great one, man. And today we got a good friend of ours. You know, he's my roommate at MLB Network and a dear friend. Let's break it down first. Guy played 12 years in the big leagues. One of the best defensive second basemen in Major League history. Multi-Emmy winner for obviously being a baseball analyst. But tell you what, working with this guy, Chinch, you know too, bro. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anyone breaks down baseball better than this guy.
Nobody.
When you look back at his career, played everywhere, played third base, played second base, first base, shortstop, could absolutely pick it. Has the Ripken brand of baseball, the Ripken way, all that stuff. He's done some great stuff with youth baseball. And like I said, one of the best analysts in the game, but also a good friend of ours. Let's bring him in, man. Billy Ripken. What's up, Rip?
Well, I should have come on sooner if I knew that this was going to be my intro. You almost made it look like I was going in the Hall of Fame.
Hey, dude, you know what's funny is we always talk about, hey, you were good defensively and stuff, and I start, I was doing my homework here, looking at things. When you came up that first year, like you had over 200 some at bats, you hit like 308 in 87. You had some decent years. The one year you led the team in 291. Like, come on, Rip. I think you were a better hitter than you give yourself credit for. No, seriously. Do you think if you would have played every day, you would have been a better hitter?
I don't know. And look, here was my gig. It was lifetime 247, but I never hit 247. If I would have just hit 247 every single year, I'd have probably creaked out a few more years as it went on. But when I came up in 87, I had 308. I think I had 72 hits in 58 games. I was unconscious. The year that I hit 291, I led the Orioles in hitting that year. But if I hit 308, the next year I had 207. If I hit 291, I had 216. So the problem with what I had was a very big problem, and it was lack of consistency. When I put some streaks together, I was pretty good, but for the most part, it was a struggle at home plate.
Yeah. Well, not easy. Not easy. It's not easy to hit in the big leagues, Dude, I want to start off a little bit before we get going about your career and everything. Obviously, you got 4 kids. And you got 4 wonderful kids. I've been fortunate enough to really kind of get into their lives because, we've roomed together at the network and we talk a lot. But I was also fortunate enough to go see your daughter Miranda play college hoops, which I thought was really cool to see you as a dad. For you, man, being a dad and being able to be a part of that, their lives and them grow up. What's the biggest advice you give your kids?
Well, I tell you what, it's a learning experience. You know this. When you're dealing with your rugrats and you're in it, boy, you see things differently when you're in it. As far as the years go by, when you can take a little bit of a step back, those are days I'd never trade in. That's for sure. Being up there in New Jersey like we are doing the network's gig, and Miranda went to school over in Stevens Institute, Hoboken, no joking.
Yes.
And the fact that I was so close in proximity, I saw 28 of her 29 senior year games. The fact that they won the first, they went to the Sweet 16 for the first time in school's history her senior year. And they won the Empire 8 Conference. It was so much fun traveling around and watching her play hoops. And she really played hoops because she liked hoops. Right. She didn't love it. She liked hoops. She went to school, got a really good education up there. When she left the gym, it was time for her to be, Miranda the girl and Miranda the student. And she did that really well too. So the thing that you find when you think about those days is they're all different. I know we're going to talk about my pops a little bit because you can't go an hour without talking about my family's group. And Senior was such, I don't know if he's ahead of his time, but I would say this. When he raised myself and Cal, he told me one time, he goes, "You're not him. You can't do the things that he can do." And a lot of people are taken aback by that, going, "Oh, what a mean thing for a father." No, he was being real. I couldn't do the things that he could do, but he shaped each individual, I think, and he put his flair and his touch on every individual that he touched, because no two individuals are exactly alike. So when you move forward, you have to understand that. But if you give your best effort, and that's what Senior told me, you'll find that in most cases, your best effort is going to be good enough. And he was right.
Wow. I know, Rip, your relationship with your dad, you guys are very close. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know you had talked about before, your dad was a really handy guy, did a lot of stuff around the house or fixing it up, and you are too. I think sometimes Chinch and I were talking, you did a demo one time, put all these pipes together, like, who the hell's know how to do that? Like, only Rip does, you know what I mean? Like, can you talk about that, your relationship with your dad off the field and what that was like?
It was a lot of fun doing that. And you mentioned Miranda, so you can see this bar top right here. This was an old antique door that I found, and then I ripped pallets apart, and I cut the pallets to go inside the panels for the bar. And this was actually at the upper bar at her wedding reception that we had not too long ago. So this is part of what Dad kind of instilled in me. It was a lot of fun because for the most part, when a lot of people say you grew up, a Ripken, okay, we were always around baseball. We were always around your father. No, we weren't. When Dad would go to spring training, Mom still had all us Rugrats at home. So he'd go to spring training. We're in school. He gets sent to somewhere when he was managing in the minor leagues. We didn't get to him until school was out. Right. So in the off season, a lot of times if we had projects around the house, I didn't necessarily like when he came in and got me up to do something. But the fact that we would do an awful lot of stuff together around the house kind of there was a method to his madness always. We always talk in Ripken baseball that it's all the little things. If you take care of all the little things, you never have a big thing to worry about. And that was all Dad. And it didn't matter if you're playing baseball, you walk a guy. Okay, that's a little thing. You make an error, that's a little thing. You give up a base hit, okay, that's a little thing. But if you do it back to back to back, it's bases drunk, no outs. Now that's a big thing. So Pops was very clear on there's a certain way to go about your business. He'd tell you if you were in school, you play hooky one day, because you don't do it nowadays because you can't. But back in our day, we could. You take a nap in class, you miss a homework assignment, and the next thing you know, the reports card gets sent out, and you're in that one quarter, and you're going, okay, why did this happen? Mm-hmm. Because now you have a little bit bigger thing to worry about. And in the scheme of things, if you'd have just taken care of business, along the way, you wouldn't be in that situation. So working around the house with Dad, there was a know-how. He was not afraid to try something. And the best way you learn something is through experience. And we did about everything around the house, and he was fearless when it came to that.
Cool.
What about you were saying before too, Rip, about your relationship obviously with Cal. I mean, Cal's obviously one of the best players in baseball history. And listen, I don't want to shortchange you either, bro, because you played 12 years in the big leagues. Like, to do that, you got to be a good player. You don't just hang around the big leagues because you have the Ripken name. You hang around because you're doing something right? Growing up with Cal, like, what was that like? Did you see, like, at what age did you see, man, that's a little different. I think he's going to do something in this game?
I think we always knew there was something a little bit different about him. And, I couldn't ask for probably a better big brother when it came to pick up games around the neighborhood, whether we're playing football in the pasture somewhere, we're playing basketball in our backyard. Junior always took an interest in me and making sure that I was taken care of. So that meant being on his team. And, he would non-stop want to play, meaning we're out in the driveway shooting hoops, and I want a PBJ sandwich, dude. I'm hungry. I need some chicken noodle soup or something and a grilled cheese. And he would get mad if you wanted to leave and not play. And I'm sitting there going, dude, I'm hungry. And I'm going in the house and I'm tired. So the fact that he never wanted to stop, he was always ultra competitive to every game that we were playing. Like all those years that I mentioned earlier when Dad was away and Mom had us, Mom was real good at keeping us all engaged and doing something. And a lot of cases, we only had ourselves in the family. And, the checkers we play, Junior would want to win. We play canasta, Junior would want to win. Everything we ever did, my man was ultra competitive. And if you did beat him, he was hacked. Right. And you knew the next time you play, if he had to fudge the rules a little bit to make sure everything was in his advantage, he would do so.
That's awesome. How good was he at hoops? Was he really good at hoops? Was that an option? Or was baseball, it was just baseball forever?
I don't know how much of an option it was. He loved hoops, loved playing hoops, and pretty competitive after the high school years were gone. For whatever reason, he decided not to play in high school, which he should have done that. That would have been a gimme. Both of us played soccer and baseball when we were in high school. And Junior was a pretty good soccer player, too. He had the know-how. He had the smarts to go along with it, to figure out what he needed to do in any certain case. But hoops probably was one that he probably regrets most, that he didn't kind of pursue that, because over the years when he built his house and put a gym at his house and he'd invite a crew over to play, and there was former college players there were former NFL players there were former NBA players there. And Junior would certainly go out there and hold his own in that setting, wow, to do some things. The problem with that, he lives about 35 minutes away from me, and he'd always play in the evening in the winter. And dude, this is after din. By the time I drive into his house, I want to take a nap. He just rolls out and gets to go down into his gym and then take a shower in his own house. By the time I got home, my feet hurt so bad I didn't want to play anymore.
Well, I heard those games are legendaries at Cal's place. I mean, he's got a big league floor, right? Big league hardwood, right? And I heard those games are legendary. Do you have any stories from those games, Rip? Like anybody show up, you're like, man, I can't believe we're playing against this guy.
There was quite a few in that realm, but the one that I did not see, because my days were done, was Junior had George Murasan show up at 7'6" or something. And Junior's gym was the size of the drop downs in high school, right, going sideways. So you got a center court, you got a 3-point line in both directions, but the center court to the 3-point line is not that far compared to the legitimate side thing. So he says, you want to see a game change when George Murasan takes about 4 steps from the top of the key to the top of the key. He'll change some things in a hurry. That's but awesome. There was a lot of guys in there. Todd Heap, the former Raven tight end. Yep. Junior said Todd Heap was trying to break his rims down. He was dunking so hard. Wow. But he had quite a few people in there that had some,
Tim Kirkchin? Was Kirkchin good?
Tim Kirkchin's
he's had a legendary status at ESPN. Everybody's like, Tim Kirkchin's the best basketball player you've ever seen. However, you said he's just more of a jump shooter.
Let's not say best basketball player you've ever seen. Timmy was pretty quick and had a really hard kind of dribble, and he was kind of coming and attacking, distributed pretty well. But let's not say best basketball player ever seen.
I love it.
We just can't do that.
How about the best small basketball? He's like the Spud Webb of Cal Ripken's, gym.
I can go with that right there, because when you see him, you go, okay, let's go ahead. This is going to be fun. But yes, Timmy could put the ball in the hole. Yeah. He could distribute and he could dribble. So, the best Spud Webb of Junior's house.
Riff, you and your brother have done so much for, obviously, Little League Baseball, the Ripken way, all the stuff you guys do, the place in Aberdeen, the place in Tennessee, the place in Myrtle Beach. I mean, it's really phenomenal. I've been down there for years with both of my sons, and all the replica fields of, Wrigley, of Camden, all that stuff. It's just so wonderful. I guess I got a 2-part question here. My first part was, going back to what you talked about Cal playing hoops and not playing in high school. I think, nowadays kids are getting so specialized in just playing year round in one sport. Do you think kids should play multi-sports? And the second part of the question was, what was your biggest influence to do the things you did with those facilities, and to make baseball such a big sport for the youth of today?
All right, so I'm gonna go threefold on here first. Okay, we've done a lot for youth baseball, not Little League. Little League's a brand that is in their own kind of section.
There you go. Okay,
So
thanks for clarifying that.
If there's 10 million kids, 2 million play Little League and 8 million play everything else.
Okay.
So we deal with the 8 million that play everything else at our facilities. One, let me stay on the facilities. Me and Junior understood, as well as you do, what it was to walk out into that big league park for the first time. Oh. And you're looking into Yankee Stadium, whoa, and Fenway, and you're going, hey, what? Come on, you're kidding me? We also realize that we are in a select few that get to know that. Not every kid is ever going to experience that feeling the way we did. So when we started building the complexes and putting the fields out there, we said, what's so wrong with trying to make the facility as nice as you possibly can to give this 12-year-old, who might not play when he's 13, by the way, an experience of playing in some replica fields that are really nice. So maybe one day, even if he doesn't play baseball past age 13, maybe one day when he's an old man himself with kids, they pick up the love for baseball that we may have helped instill a little bit into him. You know what I mean? So maybe one day when he's 35 and the kid might be 8, he goes to the real Fenway or the real Yankee Stadium, and he has memories and he has conversation with his kid about our place. So the complexes, we put a lot of effort into making them really nice. And the Pigeon Forge, Tennessee one, they're all replicated from kind of local minor league parks that are down there. We're doing 4 more fields in Pigeon Forge that's not attached into the complex itself. It's about 3 miles away, and they are cookie cutter, but we're turfing them as we speak right now. And we're cookie cuttering, but we want to tell a story of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Pittsburgh Pirates. So we'll dimensionally replicate one of those fields, all Pittsburgh, so we can talk about, the Cobra and Terry Bradshaw, and maybe give the kids a learning experience. We want to talk about the Reds and the Bengals. We're going to talk about the Seahawks and the Mariners. So who doesn't want to hear stories about Jim Zorn? If you're out there. So when we do have a case where we're going to be in somewhat of a cluster or a pinwheel of a complex, we're still going to try to make them as nice as we possibly can to kind of further along the story as it goes. And then the multiple sports case. I'm a big fan of multiple sports. I'm also a big fan if a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old kid tells his mom and dad, hey, I want to play baseball exclusively. That's his choice. I don't want mom or dad telling the 15-year-old, we want you making baseball your choice if he wants to do other things. Right. The idea of being able to play multiple sports, because baseball, whether you stand there for, you watch a pitch and then you stand there for 30 seconds, you watch a pitch, you stand there for 30 seconds. When the ball's put in play, there has to be some pretty athletic stuff going on. So, as a first baseman, if you're trying to feed the pitcher covering first base on a ground ball to you and the pitcher's covering, what better way to kind of make that correlation than 2-on-1 fast break in basketball? You got to get him the ball a little bit early. You got to get him the ball in a good situation where he can handle it. So the more you can do on other sport fields, when it's time for you, if it's time for you to ever go into one sport, why not be able to have the most athletic yourself, most athletic self available? And you get that way by playing multiple sports.
Yeah, I like that. I feel the same way. I feel like kids should be athletes first. And then if you choose one, I like what you said, 14, 15, 16, you're starting to get into high school. Okay, I know what I like. Now, right. I'm gonna play that for the full time. What about you, Rip, going back? You get drafted out of high school, I believe in 1981. 82. Did you ever have any thoughts of going to college?
I think you know me well enough to know that school and me probably don't go together.
But you're one of the smartest guys I know, though. So I don't agree with that. I think you sold yourself short, because I'm like, he's full of shit. This is one of the smartest dudes I know. I talk to him all the time. He could have gone to school.
An authority thing, maybe.
Here's the deal. Back in the day, So in 1982, when I was coming out of high school, I was 17 years old because I didn't turn 18 until December. And when I ended up getting drafted, it just seemed the normal thing to do to go into that direction. And my mother was probably as much of an influence as anybody on that point in time, because she looked at me and said, I'm not letting you go to a 4-year school. And her rationale was, your study habits don't necessarily add up right now in high school. So her thought process was, for all those years that my father was out in the minor leagues with the Orioles, he was in charge. There was a structure in place where we're going to look after these guys.
Right.
She said, in college, if you don't go to class, your professor don't care. I don't think he's necessarily going to come looking for you, whatever else. Next thing you know, you just get an Ernie, and next thing they send you home after a semester and you just waste your parents' money. Right. So I think the rationale was, you were drafted, you're going to be better taken care of on the road in a baseball setting than you would be in a college setting. That was a rationale. As you said in your intro before, Case, I tricked him for 12 years, so I can't say I made a wrong decision. I went there, and everything ended up working out, although it wasn't easy, but everything worked out.
So what were the lessons that Billy Ripken learned in the school lessons of life in minor league baseball?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with seniors' advice of take care of yourself. And that can mean a lot when you're 17 years old going away for your first time. Does take care of yourself mean, don't go drinking beers with the boys? Could be part of it. Take care of yourself. You got to eat right. You got to get your sleep. That could be part of it. But what I think I found out over the years, Case, was, look, if we would have came out in the same year and you were a Richmond Spider coming out and I came out of Aberdeen High School, the comparison is like this. I mean, kind of like your career was to mine anyway. But his point was, don't look at what he can do. Worry about yourself and do what you can do. Because I remember when I came out, Jimmy Traver went to Oklahoma State. He was my draft year. We had Kenny Gearhart out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, that went to Middle Tennessee State. He was a stud. We had another dude who was like 24 years old on the team. I'm 17 and a half in rookie ball. I thought I sucked. And I really thought that seniors' advice about worry about yourself, keep grinding, keep getting better every single day. And then it's one thing that I kind of took. Senior never told this to me, but I told my kids this. If you can stay on a chairlift and just keep climbing the mountain, you don't have to take big leaps and bounds. Just keep climbing the mountain. You'll find that in some cases, you'll have guys that are already here, and you keep climbing, and the next thing you know, you're even and you pass them. And sometimes they kind of slip down the mountain a little bit, and they've already hit their peak. So don't worry about what the person next to you can do. Worry about what you can do. Worry about yourself. And I think that was the way his advice was supposed to be going.
I like that. It's amazing thinking about, because I know if I'd have come out of high school to the minors, I'd have been out of the game in 2 years. I think it would have eaten me up and spit me out, and I know for you growing up with your dad and having that experience of, hey, we're going with dad in June when school's out, you kind of were around the game. But those first few years, you didn't come out the gates, dominating for those first couple of years. Did you ever feel like, man, maybe baseball's not for me? Maybe I'm going to do something else? Or you were like, you know what? I'm going to keep grinding and figure it out.
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think it was, I got to figure out something else, but it just seemed like I was continuing to do this because I knew I was still young. And look, the Bichette's of the world and Guerrero of the world and Griffey,
right,
and Chipper, these guys, they're going to make it. But I think for the most part, and maybe you were maybe somewhere in between those guys and everything else, but you were good. You could hit. You knew that. Yeah. I think for the most part, the majority of players who get to the big leagues are guys who need a little bit of help. And I toiled my first 4 years in the minor leagues, I was injured. Wasn't playing that much, wasn't playing that well. And there was a guy out of, went to University of Michigan with Barry Larkin, Jeff Jacobson, who was playing second base in Double-A with the Orioles. He's a Michigan grad, smart dude. They told him again he was going to go back and play Double-A at second base, and he goes, "I quit. I'm way too smart to be going back to Double-A for the third time, making $1,000 a month. I quit." And the Orioles didn't have anybody to go play second base. Those first 4 years, I was playing shortstop. I go to Charlotte in 1986. I play a full season. I was healthy. I'm figuring some stuff out on my own. I got put on the 40-man roster in that offseason. Halfway through 87, I was in the big leagues.
Cool.
And who knows what would happen if Jeff Jacobs didn't say, "Yeah, I'll go back to Charlotte again." And I think most of the players that get to the big leagues need that help. And then once you're there, because I've always said this too, Case, getting to the big leagues is hard. Staying in the big leagues is harder.
Yeah.
Because those guys coming up behind you, they want your job and to do some things. So I didn't have much in my career as far as these big moments were concerned. I have a few that stand out. But the fact that I was able to play that long in the big leagues and have people go, "That guy played that long?" That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. You get called up, Rip, in 87. We talked about that. You hitting 308. I even think you were in the middle of the lineup. You might have hit third, or you're right. I think, am I correct? Second. Nice. So you were at the top of the lineup, hitting second, doing well. I went and looked at that team. A lot of really good veteran players. Freddie Lynn, Lee Lacy, Ray Knight was on the team. Eddie Murray, your brother. Ron Washington, I believe, was coming up too, or was, the beginning of his career. What did you learn from those guys that you took on for the rest of your career?
I think Ronnie Washington might have been older than those guys you mentioned.
Oh, you serious?
The funny thing about Wash, let me go back to Wash real quick. Yeah. Because in 87, playing for John Hart in Rochester, the Red Wings, Ron Washington plays with us. So I was 22. Wash was 33. I think.
Oh, wow.
Maybe 35. And Wash played every day for John Hart. He was like the Tony Phillips before Tony Phillips. Like they were talking about defensive positional versatility in today's game. Wash would play second for me on Sundays because Johnny Hart did not play me in day games.
I was going to ask you that.
He played
explain why he didn't play you in day games and then go on. Sorry.
Because he didn't think I was sleeping on Saturday. He played short for D.L. Washington was the guy's name. Craig Worthington was our third baseman. He played 1 day a week there. He played 1 day a week in left field. He played 1 day a week in right field, and he would DH. So Ron Washington played 6 days a week. And if you go back and look at Ronnie Washington, I won't ask you to do it now, but if anybody's listening and wants to look, Ronnie Washington's 1987 AAA season, this dude flat out raped. So we get called up about the same time. And my first anthem ever, I'm standing next to Junior. I'm also throwing balls right before the game starts over to Eddie Murray at first base. So
Jeez.
when you're sitting in that kind of a setting, and I'm glad you mentioned Lee Lacy too. This dude was pretty cool. He didn't talk a whole lot, but he imparted some wisdom at the right time. But early in my career with Freddie Lynn was a member of the Orioles in the bad times. That one that streak that you want to talk about. But I played with some pretty good teammates in Baltimore and throughout my career. And I can look back and play on those memories. But being in between Junior and Eddie, like when all the debate goes on in today's world about is he a Hall of Famer, is he not a Hall of Famer? And I subscribe to the Christopher Russo Mad Dog theory about if you got to debate it, he ain't one. But I'm standing in between Eddie and Junior, and if I look left at Eddie or right at Junior, they're Hall of Famers.
Yeah. What was it? Like, I've heard so many different things about Eddie. I know him a little bit. Ron Shapiro was my agent, and it was Eddie's agent, so I knew him a little bit, and your brother's agent too. But can you talk about Eddie? Because I think sometimes Eddie gets a bad rap for, oh man, he was not the best of guys. What was Eddie Murray like?
Eddie didn't like the media a whole lot, and therefore the media didn't like him a whole lot. And then that's when you kind of have the reputation of being a bad guy, because they could keep writing about it.
Right.
Eddie was a really good guy. And I think also Junior gives Eddie an awful lot of credit for the fact that he is the all-time Iron Man right now, because when Cal got up to the big leagues, Eddie was already established. Eddie was already an everyday player at the big league level. And Eddie was one, along with my father, that kind of preached to Junior, you're getting paid pretty well to play a sport. This is your job, and you will play every day if you can, because this is the way we're going to do it. But Eddie was the one that would tell Junior if he was down and say, look, dude, I don't care if you're over 15. I can be over 15 with you. If you're in third and I'm hitting fourth, this team's better.
Wow.
And we have a chance to win ball games every single day with this configuration out there. It means something to everybody else on this team to see me and you back to back. And if you go back and look at Eddie's numbers, there's a little bit of bold print in Eddie's games played column too.
Yeah.
We know Junior had 162 in his column all the way through. But Eddie's got some 162s, some 161s, some 160s in there as well. And Eddie played every day. And I remember this too, Case, when I got called up. I don't remember if it was 87 or 88, because Eddie was still there in 88. But if the Minnesota Twins would come into town, because back then we played everybody about the same. I don't think it was an unbalanced type schedule. But the Minnesota Twins would come into town, and Memorial Stadium would put up Eddie Murray stats against the Minnesota Twins. And it would be about 155 games played, 35 homers, 120 ribbies, 280. The Detroit Tigers would come in, 153 games played, 37 homers, 115 ribbies. It was steady Eddie because he did the damage to every team. There was nothing that jumped out at me on the board. It was almost you could book it. He's hitting 280 with 35 and 110 or more.
Wow. That, when you look back at Murray's career too, and you think 3,000 hits, 500 homers, I think there's only 5 or 6 guys that have ever done that. I just think that's absolutely amazing. And I love that story you said, he was a reason that Cal probably, had that streak, because he was like, you got to be in the lineup every day. I want to go back to that streak, because for all the people that played baseball and all the fans that, during that time, right after the strike, your brother was, on the Iron Man, is trying to beat that streak. What was that like for you? And can you just convey to our listeners, how tough is that? I don't think it'll ever be broken again. How tough is it to do what your brother did?
It'll never be done again. And I don't even think anybody will ever get halfway there.
Yeah.
It seems like that's not even in the people's thought process or mentality anymore to do it. And I'll tell you this, I told you when we were kids, you never wanted to stop playing. So there was something unique about this dude.
Good point.
In 1987, we're in Toronto in the old exhibition stadium, the old football stadium where the Argonauts played in. The Toronto Blue Jays at the end of the year in 87 had 10 homers against us in a game. And Senior was the manager in 87. And Junior was on base in the top of the 8th, right? So the third out was made. I reached down to grab Junior's glove and hat and take it out on the field. And Senior whistled, gave me that. And I went, what? Ronnie Washington went out there and picked up Junior. But somewhere when the streak started in 1982 to September of 1987, Junior never missed an inning.
Oh, Jesus.
No, he didn't miss an inning. So when I didn't take Junior. So I put his glove back down and went out there in between innings, and we're doing the little in between inning stuff. And I remember looking in at Junior sitting in the dugout. My man was he lost. He's never been in that situation. And I'm sitting there going, dude, I can give you some advice. I know how to sit there. But he was completely lost. So Senior ended up pulling the plug on his consecutive inning streak. And I still think if you go back and look at all his games played, he still played 95% or more of all the innings that he was ever possibly allowed to play in in the first place. So it wasn't the fact that he played every day. This dude never missed an inning for 5 years, and then kept playing all the way up until, you know, he finally pulled the plug on himself.
Can I just quickly ask? Sorry, Sean, but let's go back just a little bit. First time you're standing there, and we can keep going with this, but listening to you talk, you're standing next to your brother. You're looking in a dugout. There's your dad. You're a big league player. Like, did you appreciate it? Like, when you would look at I was just thinking while you were telling that whole story, like, wow, what was the first double play they ever turned together? Did you cry? I would cry if I wasn't in big leagues. My brother, we just turned a double play in a big leagues together. Like, or were you guys just, your dad just instilled the right mentality in you guys to appreciate it, but don't look too far past it, if that makes sense?
I don't think I appreciated it necessarily as much as I do looking back. It was like I said, I didn't have some of the big moments. Senior was a very stoic man. And, you know, when he was asked about what's it like managing your two sons in the big leagues, he always said, well, when I was managing the minor leagues, it was like I had 23 sons, because you're in charge. So you're the big brother, you're the mentor, you're the disciplinarian, you're the father. So he would always kind of go that route. But I could tell when we did something well and there was a handshake that would take place, I could tell now. He might have shaken my hand a little bit different than he shook somebody else's. Junior says the same thing. So when I go back to that 87 year when Senior was a part of us, and it's one of my proudest things because it's still the first and only time that a manager's had his two sons in the big leagues at once. And when I hit my first homer in Kansas City, I hit a ball pretty good to left. I'm hitting second. Junior screams from the on-deck circle. I can hear him. And I'm running out of the box going, wait a minute, I don't hit too many of these. That dude back there hits a few of them. So I must have got him. So I come across home plate. I shake my brother's hand because he's in third. I'm hitting second. And Senior's at the top step of the dugout, and I shake his hand at the same time. So it's pretty cool to think back. As long as this game's been played, as many family members have now played the game, you know, multiple generations, it's still the only time the planets have lined up like that, where the father's been with his two sons on the same team.
Wow. Rip, do you ever wish that, like, your dad was more of an emotional guy? Like, you know, it seems like your dad was, you know, obviously from the generation he was from. Do you ever wish that he, you know, delivered more of a, you know, let you know that, you know, he was really proud of you?
I think the handshake, and I knew. Look, we weren't a family that, you know, said I love you an awful lot, if we ever said it growing up. That doesn't mean that we didn't, and it doesn't mean that we didn't know it. And I wouldn't change a thing. The way Senior raised us, what Senior was able to do for us growing up. You know, all those years he managed in the minor leagues, there was a stipulation that, well, he's in baseball. The Ripkens must be well off. No, Pops was working two different jobs when he come home every off season, you know, to make sure he maintained for the family and took care of the family. So he was who he was. Could I picture him today throwing BP on the backfields in spring training with a Lucky Strike heater in his mouth? He could throw an entire group of BP, 15 minutes, with one heater in his mouth, never touch it with his hand, and smoke the entire thing down the mouth. Now, would we have wished maybe he would add a few more years onto his life if he didn't do that? But it's who he was. It's him. So I wouldn't have changed anything that he did. It's what he was.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Awesome. I love, like I said, bro, when we're talking in our office, I love hearing your stories about your dad, and I can tell the pride that you had that you were his son, and just hearing these stories is really cool for me. So you spend that time with your brother and your dad in Baltimore, Eddie Murray's, all these guys, you know, you have a chance to really play, and then you end up with the Rangers in 93, 94. And we were talking about before we came on air, I said, did you play with Nolan Ryan? And I think for everybody, anyone that's a baseball fan, we've asked guys on here, did you face Nolan Ryan? We haven't had anyone that's played with Nolan Ryan. Can you talk about what he was like, and what was he like as a teammate?
Well, I tell you, when you faced him, you didn't like him very much. I know that. He had a whole lot of Texas ornery in him when you're sitting out there You're in home plate and you're facing them. So let me try to go 3 quick things on Nolan. We faced Nolan in Baltimore. This was still Memorial Stadium. Mickey Tettleton, the Fruit Loop man, took Nolan deep the night before. So the next day when we're out there taking our pregame ground balls, BP, Mickey always used to take ground balls with me at second. So I'm turning some double plays at second base to first. We're doing it. Mickey's joining me. Mickey overthrows the first baseman, one hops Nolan in the dugout because Nolan's doing his presser of the next day. And Mickey points at me. And then I basically call a timeout. I walk off the field over to the dugout.
During the game?
No. This was during BP the next day. Oh. And I said, Big Tex. That was Mickey. I said, I don't do a whole lot right in this game, but I know how to throw a ball to my target. And I said, I do that very well. That was the guy who took you deep last night who just overthrew and hit you. And I went back out on the field. So years later, I get released in Baltimore in 92. I signed with Texas as a non-roster player in 93. And I'm in the clubhouse. It might have been 2 days, 3 days into spring training. And I make the point that Nolan Ryan doesn't have any gray jerseys in his locker. Because Nolan Ryan don't make no road trip. And I make the point, I'm holding him up to everybody saying, hey, look at this. Big Tex ain't got no gray. And I think one of the media members down there took offense that how could this guy, me, make comments like that towards Big Tex? And he asked Nolan about it. And Nolan said, we could use 20 more of him around here. So that was a good thing right there. But Nolan, when you played behind him, it was certainly a different feeling than when you played against him and you were in the batter's box. And as far as a human goes, ain't no better. The family, everybody was just, it was like one of those people or one of those families case, and you know this from playing with as many people as you did, there was always kind of like one perfect family that was mixed in the locker room during that given day. And if you played against Nolan or played with Nolan Ryan, your family didn't have a chance to be the perfect family because that crew was pretty darn good. So there was an awful lot of similarities when I was in Baltimore all those years. And you're around Junior and you see the presence that he has. But it was very much similar when I went down to Texas and you're in the same locker room with Nolan Ryan. It was pretty cool.
Dude, that's really cool, man. That's right. And he's one of those guys. I think I came a few years right before he had retired, but I always would wondered what it would have been like to face him, but I just think it was so cool. And I love that too, Rip, because listen, people that don't know, maybe being in the clubhouse, sometimes when you have a superstar player, everyone dances around him. Oh yeah, that's Nolan Ryan. There's Ken Griffey Jr. There's, Barry Bonds. But listen, those guys want to be jabbed. They want to be held up. Hey, Big Tex, you don't travel. They need that, So I love that you did it, and I love that Nolan respected it because obviously he wants to be one of the guys. But hey, it turns out he throws 105 and he dominates everybody, and you're not one of the guys. But it's cool to bring him in like that, dude. All these great players. I mean, you even go back to the Rangers team in '94 with Pudge and Palmeiro and Canseco and Kevin Brown, Juan Gonzalez, some really good players. For you, who was your favorite teammate, let's say? Because I know you play with your brother, you play with Eddie Murray. Who was your favorite teammate all these years?
There was a good crew down there in Texas. There's no doubt. Considered Dean Palmer, one of my close friends. John Russell, I think he caught Nolan Ryan's 6th no-hitter, was a backup catcher down there. That was John Burkett and Bobby Witt. For 2 dudes that kind of took you under the wing. Rusty Greer down there in Texas. You named all those players. Yeah. I got to give Rusty some love because here he is on an offensive juggernaut, right? An offensive juggernaut. He's the 3-0 hitter, wow. Rusty Greer. And you go back and look at his numbers. Mm-hmm. And for the people that think RBIs don't matter, Rusty Greer would hit 18 homers and drive in 100.
He did exactly that in 96.
There are guys that hit 45 homers and drive in 89 because they drive themselves in 45 times. Rusty could flat out hit, and he was willing to pick up a lousy ground ball to the center fielder with a man on third and 2 outs to drive in with 2 outs. So when you talk about guys that were kind of maybe not noticed in the right way, that dude Rusty Greer could flat out pole.
Yeah, a couple times. 300, 18 and 100 one time, 306, 16 and 108 case, and then another time 320 and 101.
Wow. Yeah, I love when people say, "Hey, RBIs don't matter." I'm like, "What?" I remember asking Jim Leland one time, and Rip, we've talked about this. Like, Leland would say, "What do you mean it don't matter?" He goes, "I got Miguel Cabrera." I remember he told me, I got Miguel Cabrera hitting third for me. I'm going to win a lot of ball games. I got Bill Cabrera hitting for me. I'm going to be a terrible manager, right? And people would always come up to Leland after the game and they say, "Hey, what happened tonight? Why'd you lose?" "Hey, we couldn't get the big hit." And then the next day, "Hey, why'd you win tonight? Hey, we got the big hit." And guys like Miguel Cabrera drove the runs, like Rusty Greer, a guy that maybe didn't hit a ton of home runs. He got the big hits. You wanted Rusty Greer up against good pitching in the ninth, closer type guys. I think, what do you think of that, Rip, as far as like the state of today's game, like how it's a little different, how hitters approach the game? There aren't a ton of Rusty Greers out there anymore that are hitting 13 to 20 home runs, but still driving in 100.
Yeah, I think there's somewhat case of there's an infection that's going through the game in people's brains, I think, about whatever the concept was several years ago, if not more, was the strikeouts just an out.
Yeah.
It's not a very good concept. And I don't quite understand how that this game has gotten to this part, because the winners, the team that have won the World Series over these past few years, are still the team that put the ball in play and put pressure on the other team. So if you want to win, and the recent history shows the team that still puts the ball in play wins, I don't quite understand why you have to take your 3 A swings up at home plate. And if you walk back to the dugout with a strikeout, somebody might actually tell you in the dugout, "No, those are good swings." Right. No, they're not.
No, they're not.
What was your career average, Case?
302.
Okay, 302. Sorry about that.
My bad.
Could you actually say that 20% of your hits, if not more, you might have looked as ugly as any human at home plate in the batter's box at the point in time?
Yes.
Where you throw something out to left field where you competed.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the compete word is used in the game enough. Getting off your A swing 3 times and walking back to the dugout, wow, felt really good. No, feel really bad and jam something over the first baseman's head for a knock.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand where we are in the game, Case, right now, but I'm thinking that there's going to be this evidence that things that, like I pointed out about the team that wins doesn't strike out, they put the ball in play. I think that's going to come back to the forefront. People are going to say, "Okay, let's compete today. Let's go out there and be better than the other guy and not worry about our A swing. Let's just compete."
Dude, I love that. And I want to kind of stay there too, because you talk about maybe it coming back around. Guys like your dad, man, that were lifers, that were grinders, that knew what they were looking at. Your dad, if he was around today, he could go to a game and go, "Guy's got a shot to play in the show. Yeah. And this is the reason why." And I feel like nowadays in big league baseball, they're pushing out a lot of scouts, a lot of lifers, guys that do the eye test. "Hey man, I travel. I get to know these guys. I watch them every night. I see how they play," all that stuff. We're going to so many, like hiring hey, you studied analytics in college or whatever. You come work for us in the front office, and let's push out, the Cal Ripken seniors and some of these great lifer guys that really know the eye test of baseball. Do you think that'll come back around? What's your opinion on that? And also, do you think that'll eventually come back around? Like, no, this brand of baseball, we're getting guys that are just, this isn't fantasy baseball.
Right. Look, the idea of when Senior was in the minor leagues, and I'll go back to that again. So Jim Palmer came through Pops. Mark Belanger, not the greatest of players, but played on some Oriole teams that were really good. He had Eddie Murray, he had Doug DeSensei, he had Rich Dower, he had Al Bumbry. certainly his influence on my brother. Mike Flanagan came through. And back then, I can't even remember if he had another coach on his staff in a couple of those years. And I remember the last 3 years he managed in the minor leagues. I was 7, 8, 9 years old. And I'm trying to think, is when I was 9 years old, I was almost bat boy every day at a whopping $3 a game, $9 for a 3-day homestand. But I remember him being able to influence every part of the game. So when I list those players like Palmer, Al Bunbury, Eddie Murray, or Rick Dempsey up at the big league level, you just covered the gamut. You got a catcher here, you got a switch hitting first baseman, you got a center fielder with speed, and you got a pitcher. He knew as much about the overall game and to be able to help and shape every individual player as anybody ever known. Now, are there guys that might know more about specifics of pitching? Okay. Maybe specifics of hitting. Okay. But for a guy to be able to help every player on the field get better. And when you think about the manager in the minor leagues, he's standing in the dugout. So he's watching the game, half the game from the dugout. The other half the game he's watching from the third base coaching box, because that's what they did. They don't do that anymore. It gives you two different perspectives of things on what's going on. It gives you a different opportunity to be able to lock in on one specific thing and be able to help a player. If a player made said mistake in a game, senior, and look, I want information. For some reason, it's now a noun, analytics.
Right.
No, we analyze. I still like the verb. I want to analyze what it is. So information is all analytics really is. It might be a lot, and it might be different and specific, but it's still information coming in. Senior would watch a play. He'd pull out his handy-dandy 3x5 index card and his number 2 pencil, and he'd write down third inning, man made third out at third base. Put it back in his pocket, write the good player's name on it. Something else would happen. He would do the same. So he would have a series of 3x5 index cards at his desk the next day. He was always the first one at the locker room. When said player would walk by his door, he'd go, "Hey, you got a minute?" He'd come in, he would address it the next day. He'd say, "Let's not let that happen again. I understand what you were thinking. That's not going to happen again." Send him on his way. He would address 4 or 5 players a game that way. I don't think that's the way it's done in today's game anymore. I don't think that one guy has as much power through the minor leagues to be able to shape every player they have. And I think the overall game that's played is a reflection upon that.
Well said.
That's really well said. You know what? You might not know it, Rip, but I do like to read. And, for all the people that listen out there, this book, I lost the cover. But this book right here that you wrote a few years back, State of Play, unbelievable book, because, that's what I love about you, Rip, is like, man, baseball, looking at it from a true purist baseball sense, nobody better than you. No one. I'd put you against anybody. The points that you make in this book, kind of going against some of the analytics and some of the stuff we talk about. RBIs don't matter. Batting average doesn't matter. But you had such great points about, reasons, going against some of the trends that are nowadays. So, anyone out there that's listening to this podcast, the book's called State of Play by Rip. And it's just a really worthy read and just really some great points there. Rip, I want to also talk about the Hall of Fame a little bit. Recently they just had the votes, and a couple guys still are kind of hanging around, but Bonds and Clemens being off the ballot now. I'm interested on your take on that, and also guys like, do you think it's too hard to get to Cooperstown? When you start talking about, I know Russo was saying if you have to make the argument that he shouldn't be in, I don't know if I agree with that, because I look back at guys like Will Clark, Lance Berkman, Albert Bell, Fred McGriff. There's so many arguments out there, Don Mattingly, that I think are to be had. Is it too hard to get into Cooperstown? And talk about Bonds and Clemens, being off the ballot.
No, I don't think it's too hard. It's meant to be hard to get in. The players that you just rattled off, though, are worthy of discussion, especially compared to we discuss everybody nowadays.
Right.
Seriously, and that's Uncle enough. It is the Hall of Fame. It's for the elite of the elite. It's not for the really, really good player, the Hall of the really, really good. But some of those guys you mentioned right there, I'm a small hall guy. I think that when you start looking at numbers, and if it's 1% of the players, there's 750 players to start a big league season. So 1% is 7.5. So we can go through the current guys right now. And I'll go okay, Verlander, Max Scherzer, Trout, Miguel Cabrera. So we're starting to get to a point where we're going to get to 7.5 or 8 people like that.
Right.
So that means that all the other people, there's a big hang with them, the way it goes. So I like the fact that it's really hard to get into, and I try to remove myself now, Case, as much as possible on the, if we really dive into the numbers and we dissect this to that, to this to that, we can make a case somehow, some way. It's like statistics. If you took that class ever, you can make statistics say anything you want. That's just the nature of the beast. You can shape it. I love the fact that when I played against guys, that's where my Russo line of thinking comes into play. When the dude stepped into the batter's box and you threw out Albert Bell in there as a name, as a possible consideration, that dude was different.
Right.
And every time he started digging his toe in the ground and scratching his bat and making a line and getting in the box, you went, okay, bad things are going to happen. And to me, that's the Hall of Famer. That's the different guy that walks up to the home plate. And I'm not trying to discount defense or anything else along the way. The Hall of Famer to me is that guy that stood in the batter's box and presented something really, really different that no one else could supply.
Any thoughts on Bonds and Clemens?
I think people made their case. I don't think they're ever going to get in under the current system. I don't think that the whatever committees kind of come into the end of it.
Yeah.
It bothers me that, the old saying, if there's smoke, there's fire. And in these two cases, there seemed to be a lot of smoke. I'm not saying there was 100% fire because that's not been determined, but there was an awful lot of smoke. You wonder and scratch your head if there was fire. What made you do it? Why did you have to do it? Because you were already better than the rest of us. Right. And I'm to a point that if someone did get caught and cheated the game, I don't necessarily want them in there because you made your choice. You made it for a reason. And I don't think you should be rewarded for it later.
I like it. I like your rationale there. Behind you, I was going to ask you about this before, about your WBC experience, and I see you got your jersey, your signed jersey, which is really sweet. Tell us about that, about that team, and what are some of the experiences you remember about, being part of the WBC?
Well, it was interesting. I believe the number 2 man behind the commissioner's office at the time was Bob Dupay. And this might have been way back because this was 2009, right? So the Rays were in the World Series in 2008. Is that right?
2008, yeah.
Rays and Phillies.
Yep.
So I was covering the Rays and Phillies for XM at the time. And I saw Bob Dupay and I said, hey, can I talk to you? I said, I have an idea that I want to throw at you. And Bob Dupay, we were in the hotel down in Tampa. And he goes, sure, 11:30 tomorrow. And I, okay. So it was quick. It was cool. So I presented the idea. I said, I'd like to be a part of the WBC on the coaching staff. What do you think? Because I think it's a good idea. Let's check with the commissioner and let's check with USA Baseball and see what we got. So I think they got back to me relatively quickly and said, yeah, we'd love to have you on board. So that was first and foremost. And my idea was, I thought I had an itch and I needed to scratch it. So I wanted to get back in uniform at the time. So that's 2008. My last time in uniform was 1998. So I'm sitting there going, okay, 10 years later, I might have an itch. Let me see what's going on. So we go down to the USA team starts in Clearwater. We had a couple days of BP, played a few exhibition games down there against some clubs. We go to Toronto to start with, playing up there. We go back to Miami to play there. We end up playing in LA at the end of it. And I think if my memory serves me correct, it was 28 straight days, but we only played like 10 games. 28 days,
Jeez.
10 games.
Oh
and I realized that my itch didn't need to be scratched anymore. I said, I don't think I need to put on a uni anymore in this situation. But being in the clubhouse, it was pretty incredible because, Derek Jeter was in there, Chipper Jones was in there, Dustin Pedroia was in there, your buddy Big Donkey Adam Dunner was in there. And it was just kind of cool to be in that situation around those players. I was never on an all-star team, but being on that team certainly kind of felt like it. And it was a pretty cool experience, but also one where I realized I didn't want to scratch my itch.
Amazing coaching staff, too, by the way. Mike Schmidt, Lark, who else? Marcel Latchman. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Reggie Smith was the hitting coach. Yeah, we had Davey Johnson was the manager. I mean, it was kind of a who's who. I don't think there was any question about that. It was a lot of fun to be a part of. But once again, 28 days, 9 games.
No thanks. Yeah, no. or 162 for.
Now, let me tell you this, because I was 10 years out of uni, right? So we're in Toronto, and I remember this about your boy Dunner.
Yeah,
because you were talking about that ball that Sheffield hit at Dunner that handcuffed him. Yeah. All right. Let me tell you about one where he's at home plate. So I'm the first base coach in Toronto in the Dome, and I don't remember who was on first, but Dunner flicks a ball that was away, whack, to left center field. And I'm first base coach going, go, 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 go. Like I want the guy to score from first. This was in the second tank. It shot up there into the seats in the second tank, and I'm yelling, go, 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 like a moron.
Dude, you know what's great about that? It pisses me off a little bit because if Dunner were next to me, he would say the same thing. We had him on. He was our first guest in the Mayor's Office podcast months ago. But I asked him, because dude, when this guy came up, he could hit. He was hitting like 350 at AAA, but he went to left center with the best of them, right? The best of them. And I don't know if it was Jim Lefevre becoming our hitting coach in 2002, where he was like, you got to start pulling everything, that made Dunner a different hitter. But that ball right there, you talked about him going oppo second tank. I think had he kept that approach, we're talking about Adam Dunn's Cooperstown. Like I just have no doubt in my mind. It's one of the things that drives me crazy because I knew how good of a hitter he was, and it's cool to hear that story because I used to see that routinely when he came up his first year in 2001. So that must have been pretty cool playing with all those guys. Rip, I want to stay in your background a little bit. I see a glove over there to your left. Yeah, that one right there. What's that?
This is my father's catcher's pud right here.
Oh my God!
And what's funny about this is this was hanging in his locker all the time, and you just knew. Let me give you a little story about that.
Awesome.
You see the stamp on there that says Ripken?
Yeah.
Boy, he loved his stamp. I remember me and Junior, when we went away for our first time playing pro ball, we had our underwear stamped. But he stamped his pud right here, and this is the glove. I remember I was 16 years old. I think it was my junior year in high school, and we'll go up there and march off 60 feet, 6 inches, and I'm throwing a little bit. And I throw one, and Pops was pretty good at making this thing loud, And I kind of like got it back from him, and I went like this. I made a face, and he goes, what? And I said, it's a pretty good heater. And he goes, wait a minute. He threw the glove to the side. So we're up the hill, and the garage is down the hill this way. So he starts walking down to the garage, and I'm just sitting up there. So I hear the saw going, and then he comes back up, and he's got a piece of plywood, 3/4 inch plywood, that's about this big in his hand. He squats back down by home plate, and he goes, come on. I throw him another heater. He catches it off the plywood. I'll let you know when it's a good heater.
That's awesome.
So this was kind of like a board anyway, the way he used to catch. And, you know, back in the day when he was playing in the minors, he ended up getting his shoulder as a catcher. But the story was when he was playing for Earl Weaver, because you had to be a two-hand catcher with this putt.
Wow.
He took a foul tip off the pinky, and it split his pinky. Like it split the bone. So Earl wanted to take him out of the game. He just taped it up and said, no, I'm going to keep playing. The next game, he went out there with his taped up finger, caught another one right off the thing and split the tape where the pinky was. So fast forward a bunch of years back when I'm about 16 years old again, he's teaching me the change up. And he's talking about the circle change. This pinky would not sit up on the ball right. It kept going underneath because it was all decrepit looking as it speaks. But that was kind of Senior's mentality. Certainly, Junior had enough talent to be able to take that mentality and have managers that want him to play while he's injured.
Right.
Because there's no way Junior played 4 billion games in a row without being hurt or sick. And Senior's mentality and his toughness certainly was kind of transferred onto Junior.
What a story, dude. I'd have been like, get me on the DL ASAP. If you split my finger, get me out of here. You know, hey, Rip, that's funny too, because we always talk about teaching kids, and everyone's like, hey, field the ball with 2 hands. I think those gloves back when your dad played, that's the reason 2 hands was passed down from generation to generation, because basically you were fielding with a frying pan or a freaking pancake, right? You had to take the other glove, even if you were a catcher, and put it over. It's so funny. What about the other glove behind you, Rip?
This was my last glove ever worn. And over the years, I always used the Pro 1000. That was my model. And this one was a Pro 1005. Because you mentioned earlier that I started playing different positions. So Rawlings, the good folks at Rawlings, made me a glove that was a 1/2 inch longer than my normal Pro 1000. And then I started using this because I didn't want to have multiple gloves. I didn't want to try to use a big basket to go play third. And the few games that I did play at the big league level at first, I used a Franklin. Remember when Franklin came out with gloves? I think Donnie Mattingly actually had a Franklin first baseman's glove. Wow. And this one's up in the garage. So next time we ever do this show again, and I do the show with
Get the Franklin.
I'm going to hang my Franklin pud up here on the wall. But I didn't want to have to use multiple gloves when I started playing short, third, a little bit more, because I wanted to use a little bit bigger of a glove. Yeah. So the good folks at Rawlings just made me one that was about a 1/2 inch bigger and put a little fastback on it. And I got stylish at the end of my career. I had the fastback.
I can't imagine you being too stylish, so I don't know about that. That's all,
What about that stylish?
Dude, I was just going to say, when was that picture taken? Because I can't remember you with hair ever.
Well, it's not only hair, but look at Grumpy in the middle right here. Junior is all mean looking. That picture was taken in 1987, and it was in a book called The Faces of Baseball. And every picture in the book is like that with everybody else that was in baseball at the time. And obviously they picked the 3 of us. Senior didn't get the memo that day on wearing the dark shirt. Senior decided he was going to wear the white one out there. He had dark sleeves, but that doesn't matter. That wasn't the memo right there.
Oh, my God, dude. That's so good. Rip, I'd be crazy not to ask this, and I kind of want to know it for my own interest. I know you've told this story before, but my interest in – I was big into baseball cards, probably late 80s, right? Seriously. 88, 89. I would go down to like the Green Tree Marriott, pay $100, like a little bit of a weight problem at the time. Like, who wants my cards, baby? Here we go. And I'm lighting them up, passing them out. And then bam, Billy Ripken's card comes out, and it's the fuck face card, right?
Easy.
All right, it's the tuck card. All right, the tuck face, whatever you want me to say. But the bottom line is, it's legendary, dude. Of all the cards in the 80s, you can go back to Ken Griffey Jr.'s Upper Deck card and then Billy Ripken's your card that they changed 17 different times afterwards so they didn't want to say F-U-C-K on air or put it in a baseball pack. Tell us that story, man. Like, how did that end up happening?
So are you using my friendship right now for me to tell a story like this? Because I usually don't tell this one.
I'm 100%. I'm 100% using your friendship right now. 100%.
Well, first of all, let's. I will tell you the story, but have you seen the movie 8-Bit Christmas yet?
No.
8-Bit Christmas.
Okay.
It's about kids trying to raise money. Because 8-bit was kind of the system that the original Nintendo ran on.
Right.
So they were actually in a diner. These kids were taking out baseball cards. And the guy goes, well, I got Billy Ripken. And then the kid in the diner goes, who cares about Billy Ripken? Exactly. and then they talk about the error card going, this is the coolest card ever.
Wow.
So you got to look at that. 8-Bit Christmas.
Okay, I got that on there.
Pull that up. You don't need to see a whole lot about it if you don't want to, but I was in that scene right there in the diner. All right, so what happened with the card? The bat model was an R161 case.
Right.
Big old handle,
Yep.
Big old head. I remember pulling it out of the bat box. We got home from a road trip one time late. I pulled this thing out, and the grain was fat. It was like the best wood ever for me. Usually I was getting all that magazine press
28
board.
grains, yeah.
Right. This had about 8 grain on it. It was fat, thick, and it was heavy. And there's no way I could use this thing in a game. No way. So if you wrote your number on the knob of the bat and you got your knob of the bat in the grocery carts, like that's where we always had our bats in back in the day.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It might take you a little while to find your BP bat, your number 3. And if I was of the mindset where my group hit at 445 and I was going to scramble out of my chair at 444, I can't be late. So you got to find something that you can go out there and take BP with. Why I chose that 2-word phrase, I have no idea why I chose it. It was Clubhouse. It was Clubhouse humor. So I wrote that on the bat, and those pictures, the cards were taken in Fenway, because I'm pretty sure that Fleer's
facility
photographer, freelancer, worked out of Fenway. So if you went back at that set, you'd probably see a lot of people's team, a lot of teams taken in Fenway. So I remember taking my first round of BP. We always stood on the third base side of the cage, no matter if we were home or away, whatever your dugout was on. We always stood on the third base side. I took my first round, threw the bat over there to the left. I gave the proverbial jog around the bases, and you act like you're doing stuff on the bases, but you're really not. So then I come back in, I pick up my bat, and I'm getting ready for round 2, and the guy taps me on the shoulder, goes, hey, Bill, can I take your picture for Fleer? Click. One picture, one turn, click, went back in, didn't think anything of it. So the cards come out in January, I believe, somewhere in that time frame. And I remember I got a telephone call. Rick Vaughn, the PR guy for the Orioles at the time, went down to the Rays, spent a lot of time with Tampa Bay, calls me, goes, we got a problem. I said, what's the problem? And then he told me, and I'm like, oh, man. So I didn't think much about it, but it all came flooding back to me when I saw the actual card. I did not do it for anybody else's purpose. I did it for clubhouse humor, and I did it for, if I got 6 number 3 bats in the grocery cart and I'm running late, I could pick my BP bat out real quick because it stood out. And, the funny thing back in the day, the clubhouse kids were always kind of consistent over the years in these ballparks. Right. They wouldn't even have to ask. You go to Kansas City, the kid picked it up, put it right in my rack, ready for the game to start. They didn't take it all the way back in. They kind of found humor in it too, but it was done by me. It was not done for the picture, for the purpose of being on a card. It was just done for simple clubhouse humor, and it's my BP bat because there's no way I could use it in a game. It was too heavy.
God, dude, that's so good. Listen, I appreciate our friendship. You tell me that story because I know you don't tell it that much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I know, because after that card came out, then they came out with nothing was on it, and then it was faded. But it was kind of cool because in that set you must have had 3 or 4 different cards. Yeah, Billy Ripken was like, we got a new one. So awesome. That's an awesome story.
Thank you.
Coming down the end here, Rip, I'd be crazy not to ask you. You and I get to coach that in the years past, the Under Armour All-American game, and coaching the new generation of kids. And we've coached a lot of unbelievable kids. What's the difference when you watch these guys play? What do you think the difference is between these kids nowadays and us coming out maybe out of high school?
I think for the most part, they're just so used to seeing the better competition. It's just they take it for granted. Well, I don't know if they take it for granted. They're just used to it. And nothing scares them. Nothing puts them in awe because they're used to seeing this every single day. So there's no doubt that the physical gifts of these 17-year-old kid are pretty superior to the gifts that we might have had when we were 17 years old. But I also think it's because they're seeing it more. And I think that, it's the argument of the old day player. Would Ted Williams hit 400 in today's game? I don't know. But could Ted Williams hit in today's game if he grew up in today's game? Sure he could, because he had a hand-eye coordination. There was an unbelievable gift. So I think the cool thing with the kids, though, is I think the game is in a good place. I don't think that the game has as many things wrong with it as some people kind of lead you to believe. We got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do this. Let the kids play. Right. That's one of their terms. And I don't mean pimp a homer. Kids, go play, get better. But let's not lose sight of the guys that can help these guys. And you mentioned it earlier, the old scout or the old crusty dude that's been there, done it, and seen it. Right. That's the one thing that can't be replaced, and that's experience. An old dog, if you teach him a new trick, can get it. But the new trick people can't learn the experience because you have to have experience to get it. Right. And I just think that a situation like the game is in right now, let's not just push all the old guard out, and say, okay, well, this guy's, really smart. Okay, good. I want really smart. Right. But the old baseball guy in a really smart way in baseball is as valuable as anything else. And they're the ones that have to actually teach these kids how to play the game and what's going on moving forward. But the talent of the game is good. The kids are good coming up. But let's not lose sight that they can still have some old crusty dudes that actually teach them how to play, which is going to help them in turn. Yeah, I just know for me, man, the minor league coaches that I had that were the old crusty guys, I learned the most about playing the game that I took to the big leagues with me. Not somebody telling me numbers. I learned a guy, telling me, hey, in this situation, or how to grind every day, how to figure, just the things that these guys knew that someone that didn't play the game, they couldn't. Let me ask you a question, Case. Yeah, because I already know the answer, because that's why I like asking questions that I know the answers to. But you had Dante Bichette on your cast, right? Yeah. And he was talking about hitting and everything else. Yeah. The terminology in today's game, and you mentioned my book, State of Play, the launch angle thing, the craze has gone just totally crazy as far as the 2-word phrase goes. But if you look at Bichette and you look at Vlad Jr. Yeah. All right. Are they pretty good players? They're really good players. Did they have pretty monster years? Yes. Look at their average launch angle. It's well below league average because they go up there and hit tracers, right? Back up the middle. And then every now and then their bat head catches it a little bit out in front, right, and the tracer turns into this, which goes into the second tank. So just being able to talk about something, because I know what Dante believes in. Yep. Dante talks about the process of getting the barrel to the baseball. Right. He doesn't talk about anything else. And I would venture to say that those two guys that I just talked about, they share an awful lot of conversation with Dante on how to hit and how to go about your business. Yeah. So there's no cookie cutter. There's no one set way to get things done. Yeah. It's up to the individual. So when you try to force this mentality, and where I'm a little bit fearful case in the game moving ahead, if you take little Jimmy at 10 years old, who's not strong enough to hit the ball out of the ballpark, and you force this kid to swing up and hit fly balls, little Jimmy's going to be playing soccer before too long. Yeah. Little Jimmy hits a line drive or a hard ground ball. How many other 10-year-old kids want to catch that? But if you hit a lazy POS fly ball to the center fielder, the 10-year-old catches that. But you peel on one, hit a line drive and a hard ground ball, not too many people want to deal with that. Right. Teaching how to hit and teaching how to compete and teaching the wrong thing to maybe little Jimmy, you might ruin little Jimmy for life at 10 years old, teaching him the wrong stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I love, I was fortunate to play with Dante, and man, this guy was one of the best hitters I ever played with, but I love his mind with hitting too. And he talks about, and Tony Gwynn, I was watching a video the other day on Tony Gwynn. I mean, I always think success leaves clues. When you're watching some of the best hitters talk hitting, let's listen up and hear what they had to say. And Gwynn and Dante were saying the same things. Hey, listen, you really want to let the ball travel and try and hit line drives, because a home run's a mistake. If you're living out front all the time, everyone says, hey, get it out front. Careful, right. Because that guy on the mound is he's trying to deceive you. He wants to get you out front most of the time. Now, are you going to run into a couple every now and then? Yeah, that's how you get your 220 hitters who are hitting 40 bombs with a 770 OPS. And guess what? When that guy goes into playoff time, he's an out. When that guy goes against good pitching late in the game, he's an out. Does he hit 1 and 2 starters? Probably not. You know what I mean? So what kind of hitters are you breeding? And I know for me, when you get to that big league level, with the balls that are dancing those last 3 or 4 feet, if you're not letting the ball travel and trying to hit line drives, you're going to be exposed quickly, and you're a dime a dozen. The last thing we do here, Rip, the last 2 things, we have a little section we do. Who did you own and who owned you? Is there a guy that you remember like, man, I like facing this guy? And do you remember a guy you're like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble because this guy's pitching?
Well, the first one, and look, ownership, it's kind of a weird thing because I think back when some of them were pretty lucky. But Bill Wegman was a pitcher with the Brewers, and I ended up my career 12 for 17 off the
Oh, my gosh.
And I remember a ball I hit off a home plate that goes over the third baseman's head for a double. I remember a jam shot hitting about this high off my knuckle in between the first baseman, second baseman, and the pitcher's mound, where all 3 of them ran at it, and it checks up, and I walked the first base with an infield knock. It's pretty funny how that happened. Now, the last time I did face him, or one of the last games I faced him, I know I took a bridge, so that one was
that's legit. Yeah.
The reliever, Michael Jackson. You remember Mike Jackson?
Yes.
Dude, he'd throw that Frisbee up there at home plate, and I swear I could go looking for it. And I'd say, it's coming. And I'd swing and miss it by this much. I think my numbers were something like 0 for 8, 7 punch outs, and maybe a ground into a double play. And I should have just struck out again, because that's when the out would have been better for me, the strikeout. And I remember one fly ball I hit to left field in Fenway when he was with the Red Sox. It was just a fly ball to left field, but I hit it on a decent part of the bat, straight up. Victory. I threw a party. But he threw that Frisbee, and he looked mean, and he threw it hard enough, and he had a little bit of run in on you where he'd make you honest, and then all of a sudden, Frisbee. And I would swing and miss, and swing and miss.
Oh, my God. Isn't it amazing that you could go up there, look for that slider, know it's coming, and still can't hit it?
And miss it by a foot.
2 for 8 against Nolan Ryan, by the way. You got him twice, a 250 batting average.
Hey.
2 for 8. I think you had 4 punch outs against him, too.
True.
Nolan. So
it doesn't matter. 2 knocks, bro. 2 knocks. I don't care.
Funny?
I had 0.
Back in the day, the USA Today, there was the newspaper. Yeah. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When Nolan Ryan struck out his 5,000th person, USA Today ran a centerfold in the sports page that listed every player and the amount of strikeouts that they had.
Right.
So you opened up the entire newspaper.
I remember that.
To see every one of Nolan Ryan's punchies. One at bat off the him case would be humor for you was because it's not just the heater,
Right.
when these guys that throw hard. That hammer,
That hook.
started in your ear hole. So one at bat in Memorial Stadium, I remember I'm sitting there and I'm locked in, and he throws me a first pitch hook. He jelly legs me. And then I say, okay, I got a little bit wider. I said, I'm not going to flinch. He threw me another hook. He jelly legged me again. He gets the ball back, and I swear he looked at me. And I'm going, why? He's not going to dust me 0-2, is he? Why would you waste your time dusting me 0-2?
Right.
So I got back in the batter's box, and I think I backed up 6 inches or 8 inches further away from home plate. He threw a fastball away. It looked like it was this far outside. John Shulock was the umpire. He goes, trick. And I looked at him on, thank you. And I threw the bat over my shoulder, started walking out to my position or whatever. So that was one punchy. It was a 3-pitch punchy, a soldier ball. I never moved the bat. Hook, either away, I'm gone.
That's so great, dude. I love it. That Nolan Ryan is one of those guys can put the fear of God, and you're thinking, is he going to dust me here? I'm going to get 6 inches off the dish. Make sure he doesn't.
I might have been a foot. I might have kept backing up.
That's so great.
That might have been a forfeited bat right there.
So great, Rip. The last thing we do is called 9 and 90. Chinch asks a few questions. He'll ask me first, and then you respond.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Chinch.
I love you, Rip. All right.
Hall of Fame baseball broadcaster Marty Brenneman here. It's time for 9 in 90, the most ridiculous segment in all of sports.
Ready? First one, simple one. Which of these fine dining restaurants in the charming town of Secaucus, New Jersey is the best one? Applebee's, Bonefish Grill, or Olive Garden?
Oh, I'm gonna have to say the Bonefish Grill because it feels like they go get some good fish there. It's next level.
Okay. What do you got?
I'm agreeing Bonefish, but throw this one out there.
Mm-hmm.
Get the burger at Bonefish, man.
Oh.
I'm telling you, the burger
Really?
at Bonefish.
What?
They've got some special sauce on there that
Interesting. All right. That's a good one. All right. Quiz time. This is a little personal because I remember the conversation. All right. Remember Christopher Reeve's Supermans? Sean, you remember? There were 4 of them.
Yeah.
Of the 4 Christopher Reeve's Superman movies, in which one does Lois Lane realize that Clark is Superman when he accidentally puts his hand in a burning fireplace?
Oh my God.
it's got to be the second one.
I was
ding,
gonna.
ding.
The name of it?
Isn't the second one where those 3 dudes come out from Krypton or something?
yes.
Like, we're from Krypton.
Zod. And
Yeah,
his scene.
Zod. I like that one. So I'd say number 2 too. Is that number 2?
It is correct. It's
Yeah.
number 2. They were at Niagara Falls. They were on a honeymoon
Yes.
suite. But anyway, I only remember that because I was
wanted her to
working.
find out.
He did. I was working with Bill one day years ago, and he mentioned randomly that he was going to put his hand in the fireplace. And I go, like Superman 2? And he's like, yes! I don't know why. It just stuck with me.
I love that Rip knows that. It's so good.
Okay, you ready? Pick your favorite of these baseball brothers not named Ripken.
Okay.
Jared and Jeff Weaver, Pascual and Melito Perez, or Jose and Ozzie Canseco.
You know what? The Jose and Ozzie Canseco, the only reason why is because they were like twins and they look like the same guy, but Jose
wrestlers.
could hit and Ozzie couldn't.
Yeah,
so
can you imagine that?
Why is Ozzie not as good as Jose? It looks exactly like him.
Exactly like him. That's got to be so difficult for him. Go ahead. Phil.
I'm going to go out with the sleeper and do the Melito and Pascual
Yes.
Perez. Melito had the hardest, nastiest split ever. It spun like a 12-6 hammer.
Wow.
It was nasty.
Nice. All right, good. All right, which of these shows are you more likely to watch? A food challenge like Chopped, flipping houses like Flip or Flop, or an auction show like Storage Wars, Sean?
Probably a food challenge because my daughter Jillian, all we watch is food shows, and I've watched them, so I'll probably the food show.
Ripper?
I will watch all 3 of them.
Yeah,
to tell
I
you
did.
the truth. I'll take the easy way out right there. But I don't like the Chopped series. But if you got me another food show where they're making some good stuff, I'll watch that. But all 3 of them.
Oh, by the way, Chinch, you don't know this either, but Rip's a really good cook, and he makes one of the greatest homemade hot sauces out there, bro. Makes his own peppers, slice them up. He's been sending it to me for years. Rip, I need a new one, brother. I need a new one soon.
Okay, you have to answer this honestly. As fathers of both daughters and sons, tell everybody out there without kids, who's harder to raise, Sean?
Oh, daughters. Way harder, especially as a dad. Because I'm like, I don't understand what's going on here. Sometimes they're saying stuff. I don't understand the emotions. What's happening? Did I say something wrong? They just ran off. So the daughters for me are harder.
Well, it's interesting because my daughters came first. In Casey's case, the boys came first and then the daughters. So I think they both have their challenges. For Casey's point about worrying about the daughters, I think you would do that more, but I don't think they're harder. I think you just worry more.
Okay. True. You worry way more.
All right, a couple more. You both get dropped into the gladiator pit, like in the movie Gladiator. Between the two of you, Sean, who lasts longer in an arena, and what is your weapon of choice?
Well, I don't, honestly, I can bring in a weapon. I would bring in probably a sword and just start ripping that thing. I think Rip would last longer because he's kind of like MacGyver. He would kind of like figure out a way to like make the chariot into like a bazooka or something.
Make one of those whips with 3 balls on the end.
Yeah, he'd be like, Billy's made a new freaking weapon. What the hell's going on here?
What do you think, Bill?
I think I would take a battle axe in there and just put it in my own forehead to get out of there quick so Case lasts longer.
That's a good one. All right, 2 more. And be honest here, Sean. What's the worst mess you've left in the office in Secaucus that you left for Bill since you guys have been roommates? And Bill, you can chime in on this.
Am I trying to think what Bill's going to say? I think Bill is such a neat freak too. Like I've learned to be a little neater. I hope he thinks for the last couple of years I'm getting better because he still had like you go to the one sometimes in Rip's top drawer he's got forks, knives, spoons, like napkins lined up in case he brings food in. But for me, I think sometimes I leave my dirty socks laying around, and I don't know if Rip likes that. So the dirty
on the nose. He's saying it's on the nose. It's the socks.
In fact, the last time I was up there, Case, you still have a pile of socks that I brought home to my house and cleaned them, and then I rolled them up and fold them for you because those socks just sit there forever.
They start walking around the room by themselves.
Rip, I do appreciate that too. I appreciate you washing those for me and bringing those back.
See, Case flies in, so he doesn't want to take his dirties home. I drive up so I can just throw them in my dirties home. Take care of them.
That's unbelievable. All right, last one. This one's personal to me because it happened to me on Sunday night. Go to the Elton John concert, last show he's ever playing in New York. He comes out, we're sitting there, we're in like towards like the side stage, so we're watching him come out. Whole place stands up, everybody starts going nuts. He didn't even start playing the first song yet. Guy taps me on the shoulder behind me and goes, "Hey, sit down during the concert." Oh! Now, I had a response for him. You know, Bill's been telling me I've been cursing so much on the show, I'm going to not curse. But I had a response with him, and I spent the majority of the show standing up. So my question to you guys is, who's right and who's wrong? That asshole or me?
Listen, I look at it this way. If you're going to an Elton John concert, and Elton John comes out, his last show ever, I'm standing up. And if the guy behind me bitches at me, I turn to him and I say, "Hey, bro, get a better seat."
Exactly. Bill, agree or disagree?
Okay, so I'll tie this into wrestling since Case is a big wrestling guy.
Good.
The last wrestling match I think I ever went to was the Survivor Series way back in the day in D.C. And I'm sitting in the front row ringside because that way you don't have to stand up. So I like sitting in the front row or in a suite, and then you can do whatever you want.
Perfect.
It's perfect. All right, we did it. That was it.
Oh, man. Rip,
man.
Dude, thank you so much, man. This has been a great time, and going down memory lane with you, brother, is great. I appreciate you telling us the baseball card story, and looking forward to seeing you here soon, dude, when baseball gets back up and going.
I didn't have any choice but to tell you the baseball story. How am I going to use that?
Good point. That's why I put you on the spot. I hope there's a story one day you can put me on the spot, and it's because of our friendship I tell it, okay?
Okay. Fair enough.
Thank you, brother. See you soon, Rip. Appreciate it, man.
You got it.
Oh, man, Chich, I've been waiting to have Rip on, and that was so good, man. Just the history that Billy has in the game. I mean, just being a kid, growing up, going to the minor leagues with his dad. I mean, that's where you really learn baseball. I just think just so cool to hear his journey with Cal and his dad and the guys that he played with and what he's doing now. It's just really cool.
Yeah, man. First of all, one of the hardest working people in the game of baseball, in or out of it, and you can see that with his analysis when he's talking about games. But he has such a passion for the sport. He has such a passion for the people that play it, and everything that his dad instilled in him. You can see him instilling that. He does it with all the kids that work at MLB Network. He takes people under his wing and he busts his butt because he loves this game and he knows what this game is given to him, and he gives so much back to it. And we're lucky to have him, I think.
I love that you said that, because I think when you think about the Ripkens and the Ripken way and all the things they do for youth sports and all that stuff, especially baseball, they love baseball and they want to pass it on, and they want kids to play it the right way, and they want kids to love it. They want to know how fun the sport is and how many games there are within the game. I think that's really cool. So just a great interview, man. Really fun to get Rip on here.
Yeah, one of my favorite people in the world.
Yeah, one of the best, man. One of the best. So, man, Chinchy, we did it again, brother.
Yeah, we did.
Great show, and looking forward to Friday.
Yep.
Little Fun Bag Friday coming up, and man, stay grateful. Anyone out there that hasn't found us yet, pass it on to your friends. Email them, let them know. Subscribe, download all that good stuff on wherever you get your podcasts, and check us out on YouTube if you really want the visual experience. Yep. Chinch, I love you, brother. Stay grateful, and I'll see you Friday. Chinch. Support this week for the mayor's office is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming champions of the world. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th-generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0, baby. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code THEMAYOR at manscaped.com. I tell you what, though, I love these things, Chinch. I've had them. I've had Manscaped 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and this is the 4.0. This one has a new sleek design. It's perfect for guys like me, though, dude. I'm one of the hairiest guys going.
That's a fact.
And that's the fact. And forever, man, forever, I've been looking for the best trimmers. Even going way back years when I was playing, I'd always nick myself up, cut myself as the worst. These trimmers right here, man, they are the best. They are the absolute best. Trims up my back, trims up my arm, the jewels, whatever it takes. Yeah. But this trimmer is the absolute best. The 4.0, the Lawnmower from Manscaped.
I can vouch for that. I know Sean wears a sweater 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and he needs this. He sent me one. I'm so psyched. I shave with it. That's how good it is. That's how
tight and it is. Chinch, I've tried every one you could try. Every clipper you could possibly buy, I've tried. Yeah. This by far is the best.
Yeah, Sean puts a clipper on his. It'll break the clippers, but not the Manscaped. Yeah. So
everyone should have this, bro. Everyone should have one of these.
They absolutely should. So here's how you get it. Okay, you get 20% off and free shipping with the code THEMAYOR. Right, Sean? The Mayor.
Yes.
At manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping. Manscaped.com, and use the code THEMAYOR. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped, and you can look as clean as Casey does now. When he doesn't use a Manscaper, it's like Sasquatch. There's people call cops. Unbelievable.
Lawnmower 4.0. Go get it. It's unbelievable, Chinch.
Do it.